This story took place in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada, and later extended to locations in the United States, including Pennsylvania and Iowa. The tragic events unfolded between 1999 and 2003. At the center of this case was a young man named Andrew Bagby, a medical resident with a bright future ahead, and a woman named Shirley Turner. Let's explore this story together. Shirley Jane Turner was born on 28 January 1961 in St. Anthony, Newfoundland and Labrador, to a U.S. serviceman and a local woman. She spent much of her early childhood in Wichita, Kansas, alongside her three siblings, which contributed to her Canadian-American identity before she later returned to Newfoundland with her mother. Following her parents' divorce and the move with her mother, her father rarely saw the children due to the several thousand miles separating them. In fact, he showed little interest in maintaining contact with them. From the age of 7, Shirley lived in Canada. The family lived modestly, often struggling to afford basic expenses. Her mother did not work. Their only source of income came from various welfare benefits. The children received the bare essentials needed for school. Shirley's mother received food parcels, yet life remained very hard. Often the mother could not afford to pay the bills, and when the landlord demanded they move out, the family would frequently relocate to another town. As a result, they usually stayed in one place for only a few months before moving on. During the 1970s, Shirley's mother met a man with whom she formed a relationship. There is little information about this man, except that he acted as a father figure to Shirley and was well liked by her mother's family. Shirley attended school in Daniels Harbour, where they lived. Daniels Harbour is a community on the west coast of Newfoundland, in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. According to the 2021 census, its population was 220 people. The town is known for excellent wild whale sightings. Shirley felt ashamed of her poor background and perceived herself as inferior because of it. Her greatest dream was to attend university and find a good job. She feared a life of poverty. In 1980, aged 19, she finished secondary school and in the same year moved to Corner Brook, a university town. Corner Brook is the 5th largest settlement in Newfoundland and Labrador and the largest outside the Avalon Peninsula. According to the 2021 Canadian census, it had a population of around 19,333 residents. In 1980, Shirley began her studies at Memorial University of Newfoundland, initially pursuing a degree in chemistry. She moved far from her family home but was pleased to do so, wanting to become independent. Before moving east, however, she met a man named Alexander, name changed. Alex lived near her hometown. He was a few years older than her and worked as a welder. Shirley fell in love with him, but had no intention of giving up her studies. They were in a long-distance relationship, as she planned to live with him soon. In the autumn of 1981, shortly after Shirley's move, she became pregnant. It was unplanned. She did not know Alex well, they did not live together, and they had no plans for the future. Her priority was education and completing her degree, which she hoped would provide the stability she desired. To her university friends, she said she wanted to become a nurse. Teachers and students regarded her as an outstanding student. She was very intelligent and quick to learn, and her classmates suggested she should become a doctor. She had the aptitude for it. She earned excellent grades and often scored full marks on tests. At the end of 1981, she travelled to see Alex and married him. The ceremony was very modest. They married only because of the child Shirley was expecting. Shirley completed another year of studies and in the summer of 1982 gave birth to a son. She spent the following years in Parsons Pond. Although living near her mother and siblings, she did not want to maintain contact with her family, choosing instead to focus on raising her child. Some recall her as being possessive, and her relationship with her mother-in-law was strained. Shirley disliked that her mother-in-law wanted to give advice and help with childcare, and she tried to keep her away from her grandson. Unsure if she could manage studying with a young child, by the end of summer she decided to return to university. Her husband moved with her and their son so they could be together, finding work as a welder. He worked part-time, caring for the child so Shirley could study peacefully. After the boy's birth, the couple received child benefit payments. It was not a large amount. They decided to open a savings account for their son, into which they would pay the money so he could attend university in the future. However, many years later, it emerged that Shirley deceived her husband, spending the money on her own needs and studies instead of saving it for their son. In 1983, the family returned to Parsons Pond, where Shirley found work in a school. She worked there from 1983 to 1987 and was liked by the pupils, teaching science. In 1985, she gave birth to a daughter. Following her birth, the couple again received money, child benefits, which Shirley also spent. Feeling guilty, she opened a savings account for the children's school and transferred small sums into it. Encouraged by her friends' words, Shirley resolved to become a doctor. Her husband sometimes thought it was her most important goal in life, more important than family. She focused so strongly on her career that she began to distance herself from them, spending less and less time with her husband and children. Her marriage began to slowly fall apart. For a time, she paused her studies. During this period, the family left the island and moved to Labrador City. Shirley found work in a local school, while Alex worked as a welder for a large company. Shirley reconnected with a man she had gone to secondary school with, Derek, name changed. For a while they dated, but after finishing school their relationship had ended. They had both left the town and lost contact. When they met again, they lived in different parts of the province. Shirley was living with her family in the west, but was unhappy. She felt Alex did not support her or want to help her become a doctor. Derek lived on the southern tip of the Labrador Peninsula and worked as a fisherman. They began a passionate affair. Shirley kept everything secret from Alex. She travelled to various places with the children, leaving them in the care of grandparents while she went to meet her lover. She spent several days with Derek, and when her husband phoned her mother, she pretended everything was fine. Shirley continued the affair with Derek for 2 years, until her husband found out. She did not hide the fact that she no longer cared about the marriage and did not want to be with Alex, who kept pressuring her to find a job. In 1987, they decided to separate. Alex remained in Labrador City, and Shirley moved with the children back to the island. She lived with or near her mother and taught at a local school. The divorce was finalized in the summer of 1988. Shirley moved to another town, but still did not live with Derek. They could not agree on where to live. In July 1988, Shirley found out she was pregnant. She was not ready for another child, so she decided not to have the baby. 2 weeks later, she married Derek and adjusted to his work. Shirley's mother was a great support to her. In 1989, the children went to live with their father. Alex knew that to his ex-wife, the children were an obstacle. Alex moved close to his parents, who helped him care for the children. Meanwhile, Shirley returned to her studies. Shirley's relationship with Derek was turbulent. Derek soon discovered that his partner was argumentative and unwilling to compromise. Her needs always came first, and it was he who was expected to adapt. When she resumed her studies, he had to change jobs in order to live closer to her. It then became clear that she was pregnant again. She did not want another child, but her new husband promised he would take care of the baby. Their daughter was born in March 1990. After her birth, Shirley again received a sum of money, which she promised to place into a savings account for the child, but once more she kept most of it and used it to pay for her studies. In 1991, she moved out of the family home. The couple remained separated for several years, with the divorce only finalized in 1997. In truth, their marriage had broken down before their daughter was even a year old. Derek took full custody of the child, while Shirley rarely saw her, or the children from her first marriage. In 1994, Shirley completed her chemistry degree and began studying medicine, which she finished in 1998. Her family did not believe it was wise to take on such a demanding degree while having children. By then, Shirley was 33. and medical studies would take at least several more years before she could qualify as a doctor, all while needing to support herself. Her 3 children needed their mother, but for Shirley that seemed unimportant. What mattered most to her was becoming a doctor. For a time, while she was still living with Derek, Shirley took the children to live with her. Alex initially believed she genuinely wanted to care for them, but it turned out she was interested in the government child benefits she received for them, which she used to fund her education. When Alex tried to take the children back, Shirley refused, so he reported the matter to social services. He alleged that Shirley was mistreating the children. He contacted staff at her university, including a psychologist who worked in the chemistry department. That psychologist reported seeing Shirley strike her eldest daughter. Allegedly, she also subjected the children to emotional abuse, shouting at them and insulting them in front of others. According to the psychologist and others in Shirley's circle, she would often leave the children alone on weekends while her second husband was away for work. At the time, her son was 11 and her daughter was 8, still too young to be left without adult supervision. Their youngest sister was also with them. Social workers also interviewed staff at the children's school. Teachers and the head teacher expressed concern. From what the children had said, it appeared that violence was taking place at home. However, no one at the school formally reported it. Action was only taken once child protection workers arrived at the school. Derek admitted that he had been aware of the punishments Shirley used, but claimed she had only ever used her hands. Child protection workers attempted to contact Shirley 3 times, but were unsuccessful. In early 1994, the case was closed. Shirley faced no consequences. In the autumn of 1994, as the new academic year began, she left her family and moved to St. John's, where she studied for several more years. Only then was Alex finally able to care for the children himself. Previously, social workers had told him there was nothing they could do. By 1995, the children were once again living with their mother, who openly admitted she needed the money from government benefits and child support from the fathers. In her 3rd year of medical school, she told everyone she had too many responsibilities and that the children were interfering with her studies. As a result, the older children returned to live with their father, while the youngest daughter was cared for by Shirley's mother. Derek, due to his work, could not provide suitable conditions for raising a child. In March 1996, Shirley Turner began a relationship with Miles Doucet, a resident of St. John's who was 13 years her junior. After Miles ended the relationship that same year, Shirley began stalking him, calling him repeatedly, striking him in the jaw with a high-heeled shoe during a confrontation, following him to Halifax and later to Pennsylvania, leaving threatening voicemails and behaving so aggressively that he eventually contacted the state troopers to have her removed. Miles feared for his life, but the police failed to take any action. Around that time, Shirley's stepfather became seriously ill. Her mother had no intention of looking after him and planned to move to another town, which deeply upset Shirley. Her stepfather had been like a father to her, and she stayed in contact with him until the day he died. From that point on, her relationship with her mother became strained. She rarely saw her or her daughter. She focused on her studies, which she completed in 1998. At last, she had earned her medical degree. She worked as a resident in several hospitals. One of her former partners discovered that she had withdrawn several $1,000s from their child's savings account. When confronted, Shirley claimed she had merely borrowed the money and would repay it after completing her studies. But she never did. Shirley was on track to become a general practitioner. She had little regard for her patients and showed no empathy. Nevertheless, she was intelligent and had extensive medical knowledge, which is why she was seen as a competent professional. She enjoyed the profession because it brought prestige and a good salary. Unfortunately, problems at work soon arose as she struggled to maintain good relationships with colleagues and supervisors. She could not accept criticism. In 1999, during her medical residency at a family practice clinic in St. John's, her supervising physician described her as becoming quite hostile, yelling, crying and accusing me of treating her unfairly, to the point that staff refused to meet with her alone, fearing her behavior. He reported feeling manipulated in every interaction, stating that whenever any negative feedback was given, she would shift the conversation onto his own shortcomings. Though she could appear charming and pleasant, when caught in a lie, she would quickly turn angry, accusatory, and loud. He later said he could not recall another trainee like her in over 21 years of supervising more than 400 residents. He described her relationships as superficial and, in a later assessment, referred to her as a manipulative, guiltless psychopath. The situation prompted the clinic to review and revise how it handled residency evaluations. Despite the severe evaluations, Shirley completed her residency training and by summer 2000 was licensed to practice medicine. Although she had been repeatedly criticized for her hostile outbursts and manipulative behavior, she officially met the requirements to work as a doctor in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. Shirley Turner met Andrew Bagby in 1999 while both were living in St. John's, Newfoundland. Their relationship began shortly afterward, despite warnings from friends and family about Shirley's unpredictable behavior. Andrew, born on September 25, 1973, came from a well-off family in Sunnyvale, California. He was a devoted medical student at Memorial University in St. John's when they met. At the time, he was 26 years old. Shirley, by contrast, was nearly 13 years his senior, already 38. Andrew was the only child of David Franklin Bagby, a former U.S. Navy serviceman turned computer engineer, and Kathleen Daphne Bagby, née Barnard, a registered nurse and midwife originally from Chatham, Kent. Andrew had been a long-awaited and much-loved child. He was bright, but as a boy, he struggled with his emotions and could be impulsive. His parents worked hard, attending therapy sessions with him and helping him learn to regulate his feelings. In time, they succeeded. By the time he reached adolescence and adulthood, Andrew had grown into a calm, thoughtful young man. He was sociable, good-humoured, and well-liked by everyone he met. He made friends easily and could talk to anyone. Since secondary school, Andrew had been in a long-term relationship with a young woman named Heather, who also dreamed of becoming a doctor. Andrew's parents adored her. In 1996, he left for university in Canada. The following year, the couple amicably ended their relationship, as Heather didn't want to relocate. Unfortunately, she wasn't accepted into medical school, and Andrew's parents offered her a place to stay until she found work. Andrew had no objections. Even after their breakup, they remained close friends. He knew how much she meant to his parents, and to them, she was like a daughter. In 1999, Andrew met Shirley, who spoke to him about her medical residency, which intrigued him. What he didn't know was that Shirley was still emotionally entangled with her ex-boyfriend, Miles Ducey, the same man who had fled to the United States and reported her for harassment. In April 1999, just 3 months after she began seeing Andrew, Miles found Shirley semi-conscious outside his flat. She was in a bad state. Apparently, she had taken an overdose of over-the-counter medication in an attempt to end her life. When Miles discovered her, she was wearing a black dress and holding a bouquet of red roses. She had 2 letters with her, one addressed to Miles declaring her love, and another for her psychiatrist. In the letter to her psychiatrist, dated 7th April 1999, she wrote, "I am not evil, just sick." Miles immediately rang emergency services, and Shirley was taken to hospital. That was the last contact they had. Miles wanted nothing more to do with her. Later that same day, he received a phone call from a woman who refused to give her name. She told him only that Dr. Turner has died. At that moment, it seemed Shirley had vanished from his life, but it wasn't until years later that he discovered she had never died at all. Back in Canada, Shirley continued her relationship with Andrew as if nothing had happened. In July 1999, Heather, Andrew's ex-girlfriend, arrived in Canada after being accepted to study at the same university as Andrew. She told his parents that she believed Andrew was the love of her life and hoped to rekindle their relationship. But it was too late. Andrew was already seeing someone else. Heartbroken, Heather informed his parents about the new relationship. They were surprised. They had no idea Andrew was dating anyone. They called him to ask about it. He confirmed the relationship, but described it in a way that suggested it wasn't serious. In August 1999, Andrew travelled home to California and told his parents he wasn't ready for a committed relationship. Shirley, he said, was quite a bit older and had been through 2 failed marriages and had 3 children. They got on well, largely because of their shared interest in medicine. Shirley had already qualified as a general practitioner, and Andrew, still in training, hoped to become a surgeon. While Andrew was at home, Shirley phoned the house. His mother answered. Suspecting her son hadn't told her everything, she was curious to learn more and decided to speak with his new partner. She didn't have to press Shirley for information. Shirley launched into a detailed account of her life and her plans. She said she intended to move to the United States for work, something she could do thanks to her dual citizenship in both Canada and the US. She also revealed that she planned to relocate without her children. This troubled Andrew's parents. From that point on, Shirley began calling them regularly, dominating the conversations and rarely allowing them to get a word in. In September 1999, Andrew brought Shirley to visit his parents' home for the first time. He explained they were attending a friend's wedding and that Shirley would also be looking for work while in the area. His parents noted that Shirley behaved exactly as she had on the phone, talkative and controlling. She dominated the visit. In August 2000, Shirley moved to Sac City, Iowa, where she began working for Trimark Physicians Corporation, a group affiliated with the Lutheran Hospital there. She tried to maintain a long-distance relationship with Andrew, who by then had started a surgical residency in Syracuse, New York. Despite the miles between them, Shirley visited him in Syracuse several times, while he made only one visit to Sac City. In autumn 2001, Andrew moved to Latrobe, Pennsylvania, to begin a new residency in family medicine. After graduating from Memorial University in May 2000, he had originally started surgical training in Syracuse, but found it unfulfilling and opted to switch to family practice. Andrew's parents were not thrilled about his relationship with Shirley. In December 2000, she contacted them to say she was taking her children to Disneyland and asked if she could stay at their house overnight, on the way there, and again on the return journey. They agreed. Some months later, she again asked to stay, this time with a friend, the friend's husband, and their child. The Bagbys agreed, though they found it odd that Shirley never invited them to visit her. During that visit, something unusual happened. Andrew's parents were playing with the friend's child, and Shirley became visibly jealous and possessive. Later, at a restaurant, she invited everyone to dinner, but things quickly escalated. Shirley accused her friends of treating Andrew's parents like a free hotel. She then stormed out of the restaurant and began venting to a stranger. Her behaviour, to those watching, seemed emotionally unstable. Shortly after visiting Andrew's parents, Shirley Turner relocated from Sac City to Council Bluffs, Iowa, in July 2001. She resigned from her position at Trimark Physicians Corporation, despite being less than a year into a 10-year contract, and moved to accept a new role with Allegiant Health System. At the time of her resignation, she owed Trimark more than $156,000. In Council Bluffs, she resumed working in family practice and obtained hospital privileges to continue her medical career. Shirley began to notice that Andrew was pulling away. He suggested they both focus on their careers and hinted that they should remain friends. Andrew wasn't ready to settle down or start a family. He wanted to concentrate on work. As contact between them became increasingly infrequent, Shirley began calling him obsessively, sometimes dozens of times a day. She left voicemails, sent emails. At times she declared her love for him, and at others she issued threats, telling him that if she couldn't have him, no one would. In October 2001, Shirley obtained a firearms license. She bought a handgun and began attending shooting lessons several times a week. Later that month, Andrew told her directly that their relationship was over. That was when Shirley claimed she was pregnant. Andrew was caught off guard. He believed they had taken precautions. At the end of October, the two met in the town where Andrew was living. He told her plainly that he didn't want to be with her romantically, but he did want to be involved in raising the child, if there was one. He also revealed he had begun seeing someone else but refused to name her, fearing Shirley would target the woman. During their meeting, Shirley continued to insist she was pregnant, but just a few days later she admitted it had been a lie. Andrew was furious. He bought her an earlier return ticket and drove her to the airport himself. Before she boarded the flight, he told her he never wanted to see or speak to her again. The following day, 4th November, Shirley tried calling Andrew 3 times, but he didn't answer. That afternoon, at around 1 p.m., she set off in her Toyota RAV4 and began driving toward Latrobe, Pennsylvania. In the glove compartment of her vehicle was the handgun. The journey covered over 1,000 miles. She chose to drive rather than fly, knowing it would be difficult to carry a firearm on a commercial flight. In the early hours of November 5th, 2001, Shirley arrived at Andrew's home. His house was on one side of the street, while his workplace, a medical practice, was located directly across the road. After a brief conversation, Andrew left for work to begin his morning shift. He mentioned to his supervisor that Shirley had turned up unexpectedly and said he planned to speak with her. Concerned, the supervisor urged Andrew not to meet with her privately. He advised him to tell Shirley to go home, or, if he insisted on speaking with her, to do so in a public place. He simply didn't trust her. Andrew agreed and said he would see Shirley briefly, then spend the night at his supervisor's home, just in case. That afternoon, Andrew finished work and returned home. Later that day, Shirley left a message on his answering machine saying she was already heading back home. The next morning, Shirley called Andrew's mother, Kathleen. She knew Kathleen would be at work, as her schedule was always the same. Kathleen explained she had patients and couldn't talk, but Shirley kept speaking, telling her she had just come from the hospital and describing her plans for the day. Kathleen asked if she had spoken to Andrew. She hadn't been able to reach him and was beginning to worry. Andrew always answered his phone, and if he couldn't, he would return the call promptly. About half an hour later, Shirley called Kathleen again. This time, she asked whether Andrew had rung his mother, saying she hadn't been able to get through to him either. She mentioned she had spoken to him 2 days earlier, and that he'd seemed very happy. Shortly after that, Shirley phoned Kathleen again. The conversation was disjointed and strange. Kathleen struggled to understand what Shirley was trying to say, and eventually had to hang up, as she was in the middle of her workday. One detail, however, stood out. Shirley mentioned that a police officer had contacted her, asking for her supervisor's name and inquiring where she had been on the 4th and 5th of November. That detail alarmed Kathleen. She rang the local police in Latrobe to ask if they knew anything about her son. She hadn't heard from him, and his partner had been giving her mixed messages. And that was when she received the worst news of her life. Andrew Bagby had been found dead. He had been tragically murdered on November 5th, 2001, in a car park at Keystone State Park, located in Derry Township, just outside Latrobe, Pennsylvania. It was the same place where his body was discovered with multiple gunshot wounds. There was no physical evidence at the scene. Police had only the information about the type of weapon used, and everyone they spoke to pointed in one direction. The only person who might have had a motive to harm Andrew was his ex-girlfriend, Shirley Turner. When police contacted Shirley Turner, they asked her where she had been on the 4th and 5th of November. She claimed she had been unwell, resting in bed, and that she hadn't gone to work. But the evidence told a very different story. Investigators discovered that on November 4th, Shirley had looked up directions from her home to Latrobe, Pennsylvania. On the 5th of November, she had logged into Andrew's home computer using her own email account. She had also called his mobile phone from the landline in his house, leaving a voicemail saying she was on her way home. When presented with this evidence, Shirley changed her story. She admitted that she had met Andrew in Keystone State Park on the 5th of November, but insisted nothing had happened. She said she hadn't told police because she feared they would see her as the prime suspect. She also stated that Andrew knew she owned a gun. She did, after all, have a license, and that he had placed it in the boot of his car. But her account didn't match what she had told her firearms instructor. According to him, Shirley had claimed that her gun had been stolen. That same weapon was later found in the boot of Andrew's Toyota Corolla. There was further proof. A condom wrapper discovered in Shirley's flat was traced back to a pack Andrew had purchased on the 5th of November, the day he was killed. This confirmed that she had seen him that day, just before his death. Before police could secure a warrant for her arrest, Shirley fled the country. On November 12, 2001, she flew to Toronto. From there, she travelled to St. John's and moved in with her 19-year-old son. Police quickly tracked her down, but rather than arresting her immediately, they placed her under surveillance, hoping she might try to dispose of evidence. In early December, officers intercepted her household rubbish. Among it were printed results from an ultrasound dated 29th November. It showed that Shirley was pregnant and that the fetus had been conceived roughly a month earlier, just before Andrew's death. This meant that, during the final conversation in which she had tried to deceive Andrew about being pregnant, she had actually been telling the truth, though she may not have known it yet. On December 12, 2001, Shirley Turner was arrested and taken into custody at a Canadian prison. Extradition proceedings were initiated to return her to the United States, but a Canadian court ruled that she did not pose a danger to society and released her on bail. The amount was set at 75,000 Canadian dollars. She was required to surrender her passport, report weekly to the authorities, and was forbidden from contacting Andrew's family. Her bail was posted by a former colleague, who was also her psychiatrist, and the person prescribing her medication. When Andrew's parents, David and Kathleen Bagby, learned that Shirley was pregnant, they began seeking custody of the child. On the 18th of July 2002, Shirley gave birth to a baby boy named Zachary Andrew Turner. At first, Shirley refused to allow Andrew's parents to see their grandson. She claimed they might try to kidnap him. Her lawyer advised her that it would look better in court if she agreed to supervised visits, but Shirley responded by firing him. Eventually, David and Kathleen were granted visits with Zachary. It quickly became apparent that the child did not seem strongly attached to his mother. Some even described his behavior as avoiding her. As their bond with their grandson grew, Shirley returned to prison, and custody of Zachary was temporarily awarded to his grandparents. But once again, Shirley was released on bail in 2003. The court still did not consider her a danger. In July 2003, Shirley began a relationship with another man. She quickly became emotionally attached and initiated a sexual relationship. But when the man found out that Shirley was facing extradition to the US for the murder of her former partner, he ended things immediately. What followed was disturbingly familiar. Shirley began calling him dozens of times each day. She claimed she was pregnant with his child, though there was no evidence of this. The man contacted the police. Technically, Shirley had violated the conditions of her bail, but the man was too frightened of her to file an official complaint. By this time, Shirley was still awaiting extradition to the United States. On 18 August 2003, she filled a prescription, written by her former psychiatrist, for a range of medications. She collected the drugs from a pharmacy in St. John's. She then drove to the coastal town where her most recent romantic interest lived. Parking her car near his house, she left a series of disturbing items on the front seat: photos of herself and Zachary, and a used tampon. Then she mixed the prescription drugs with baby formula and fed it to her son. Afterwards, she ingested what she believed to be a lethal dose herself, tied Zachary to her chest using a jumper, and jumped off a cliff into the ocean. Shirley drowned. Zachary did not. The dose of medication he had been given proved fatal. Their bodies were discovered later by hikers on the shore. In May 2006, the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Newfoundland and Labrador found Dr. Doucette, the psychiatrist who had helped Shirley post bail, guilty of professional misconduct. He was fined 10,000 Canadian dollars and ordered to undergo psychiatric counselling. The disciplinary ruling drew public attention to the serious ethical breaches in his conduct. Following the heartbreaking deaths of Andrew and Zachary, David and Kathleen Bagby dedicated their lives to preventing such a tragedy from ever happening again. They became powerful advocates for bail reform in Canada. They argued that Shirley Turner's release, while facing murder charges, directly led to the death of their grandson. Their tireless efforts helped lead to the introduction of Bill C-464, also known as Zachary's Bill. The bill aimed to amend Canada's criminal code so that judges could consider the safety of minor children when deciding whether to grant bail. Introduced by MP Scott Andrews, the bill passed unanimously in the House of Commons and was adopted by the Senate. It became law on the 16th of December 2010. Zachary's Bill marked a turning point in Canadian legal reform, a step towards ensuring that the safety of children is always a paramount consideration in bail decisions. Andrew Bagby was a devoted son, a loyal friend, and a young doctor full of promise. His life was senselessly cut short, just as his future was beginning. Zachary Turner never had the chance to grow up, to run, to play, to know the love of his father or grandparents. He too became a victim of a system that failed to protect him. Their memories live on through the tireless work of David and Kathleen Bagby, whose courage turned unthinkable grief into a lasting legacy. Zachary's Bill now stands as a tribute to their fight, a law that ensures no child will be forgotten. Thank you for listening. Until next time, take care.